In Mega Man X8, you kill Sigma and are told that he's gone for good. Looking at things over 20 years later, how right Lumine was, though probably not in the way he intended. Putting aside my lament, I do believe that we will get an X9 someday, though don't ask me when. Instead, why don't we question how likely it'll be whether the Sigma staying dead thing will stick? I'd say no. Thanks for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into retro games, especially Mega Man. Okay, a single word ain't really much of a response, and I'll refrain from just giving a "oh hell no" as a follow-up. Instead, let's look over the actual components to my answer. I'm Wes the Explosion, and today, I'm here to tell you why I sincerely doubt that Capcom will cut Sigma out when we see an eventual return to the series. First, I should probably explain why Sigma not coming back is even a possibility, or to put it another way, I should start by arguing the other side. While the ending of X8 is largely the same regardless, depending on who you land the final hit with, you'll get a short extra scene that hints at what's coming next. Clear things with Zero and he'll say that, according to what Lumine said, Sigma's never coming back, which sounds kinda like wishful thinking. I guess you could interpret his words that way, though unless I'm missing a line or a localization change, I don't think he ever says that directly. If someone can find me something, I'll pin the comment. Still though, while there are other ways we could take Lumine's lines, I don't think it's too hard to infer that he's declaring that the new generation Reploids are going to be the main threat going forward at the very least. There are a few reasons we can take Zero's interpretation at face value. First off, it's a bit too specific a conclusion for a main character to reach and put out there, especially someone as cool as Zero. Surely, he'd never make such a bold claim, only to be proven wrong and look like a huge douche right in front of the audience. Though I guess it could also be used as a cheap way to make Sigma's return have impact. Zero said he's dead, but he came back for the 10th time? This isn't what I was promised at all! The wiki mentions how when you defeat Sigma, he yells, "Impossible!" and screams as he blows up, as opposed to his typical laugh and then transform or just mock X and crew, while threatening to come back, making it seem like this might have been more final. Sigma's body also feels a little less put together this time. Well, outside of X6 where he seems really cobbled together, here he has less details, his skin looking more like charcoal, some parts seem incorporeal, and he has an exposed core. Still pretty powerful though, so maybe he went for strength over stability, which could have also put him at permanent risk. The biggest indication that he might be done though is that while you defeat Lumine, there's some pretty dark implications that you aren't actually done with him. He's likely to supplant Sigma as the main villain. And you know what? I'd go along with all of this if it hadn't been over 20 years. Plans, circumstances, and needs change, or in this case, revert and stay the same. So while I think there was a real possibility that an X9 that had come out just within a few years of X8 would have seen Sigma removed from his role, that ain't what happened, which is why I think we will see him return. Eventually. The main reason is also the simplest, and that's that it's always Sigma. Well, it's not always Sigma. It was Redup's in Command Mission, and it was Sigma until it wasn't in X8, but still, he was there for every game except the one time they just swapped genres, so to call him a staple would be pretty accurate. This is also just how a lot of retro series work. It's always Wily, Bowser, Eggman, Ganon, etc. Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing is kind of open to interpretation. Some people get annoyed with the repetition, like how many times can Peach get kidnapped before the Toads actually make the effort to up their game? Why couldn't King have been the bad guy in Mega Man and Base? And should Sonic just kill Eggman? At the same time, characters can become iconic, and while there might be a few exceptions, a one-off baddie ain't gonna be as popular or familiar as the main villain. Despite being allies about as often as enemies, King Dedede and Meta Knight would still be considered the main antagonists for Kirby. Despite touching Star Fox Command and Assault both within the past year, I still remember that one time Andross came back at the end of Dinosaur Planet more vividly than the Bug and Anglerfish people? And while sales might have something to do with it, I still think Sigma would be more iconic than Redups or Lumine had the same amount of people play their games. So not only is it easier for the developers, that's one less character they have to come up with, That's also one less thing they have to sell you on. New game, new villain, is this guy really going to be as cool or imposing as the last? Instead, if you're already on board with Wily's Saturday morning villain shtick, or the threat that Sigma entails, well, you can continue to be. While it did get a little annoying when they tried to convince you that it wasn't one of them for several games, that itself turned into something of a joke, and who doesn't love jokes, especially inside ones? References. To expand upon something I mentioned earlier, it has been way too long since X8 for them to just bring the series back with too many major changes. Most people are going to be expecting Sigma, many are going to have no idea who the Purple Kid is, and given that a new game is probably going to be capitalizing heavily on nostalgia and recognition, I think that swapping the big bad out would be way too risky for them to try it. But how much appeal does Sigma actually have? Well, I mean, I did just go over how he's in pretty much every game, which has to count for something, though perhaps more significantly, there's X-Dive. It's a gacha game, which trying to get you to gamble for characters is a big part of its business model. And how many different variations does Sigma have? 4. X1, X4, Halloween, and Gangsta Boy. Is that really what they call that last one? Seriously? That's in addition to a few of his final, "Oh no, you're a wall now" forms popping up as bosses. And while 4 might not sound like too many, it kind of is. CL and Roll have the same amount, with X, Zero, Iris, Rico, and Aiko having more, so this does put him pretty up there in terms of representation, especially when you consider how they don't even resort to popping him into a swimsuit, like with a lot of the girls. Wasted opportunity. So in a game meant to tempt you into spending money for a chance to snag attractive characters, they trusted Sigma to make sales. Even more telling though is his role in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Say what you will about the final product, making him one half of the main villain for a major crossover shows how much they trust him, not just to carry the role, but again, to move units. They even made just Sigma a playable character himself as DLC. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention this awesome figure of Sigma that I got from way back in the day. Meanwhile, I think Lumine is just a card or something in X-Dive. Maybe a Spirit in Smash Ultimate? Guess not. For the coup de grace though, there's how Capcom just doesn't care. I mean, they care, just not about Mega Man lore, the X series in particular getting overwritten and retconned a lot. Zero dies. He comes back. Vile is an on-again, off-again villain. X5 was the series finale, but got an immediate sequel. Speaking of, Zero died and came back again. I don't know if Command Mission's existence even really makes sense. I think a lot of this takesy-backsies mentality actually screwed a good bit with the Zero series too. Hard to do a direct sequel when you keep changing the ending, just ask Axel. Wonder how different things would have been had they just left things live with X5. Anyway, my point here is that it doesn't matter what the game said, what the original plan was, what Lumine claimed. That all kinda goes out the window if Capcom decides that they need Sigma back for X9 to work, if for no other reason than for marketing. But how would they bring him back? Well, as you can probably figure by what I just got done saying, the easiest way to do this would be to just bulldoze ahead, pretend he was never given a shelf life, and just bring him back like they always do. It's not too different from how Sigma went from a run-down mess, barely holding himself together in X6, to having a teaching degree in X7. If there was a time to phase him out, that was probably it. The later X games did start to see flagging sales, and the first X Legacy Collection sold better than the second, I imagine by a good bit, and even if you do play X8, you can still miss them writing Sigma out, so it wouldn't surprise me if most didn't even know he was supposed to be gone. If you wanted to keep things in line with how X8 set things up though, you could weave it directly into the story. They don't really go too deeply into why Sigma's definitely positively gone this time, we're just kinda meant to accept it, if we get the right scenes or read too deeply into what Lumine says. Speaking of, while Lumine claims that all new generation Reploids are immune from the Sigma virus, I don't think he's really considered his circumstances as much as he thinks he has. All new generation Reploids can transform and contain the DNA of Sigma. Their evolution was brought about by Sigma and he considers them his children. They possess the ability to go Maverick at will, and I'm not sure of the ratio, but at least all the ones we see seem to be turning on humanity. Yeah, I know that he's trying to frame it as a matter of philosophy rather than a virus for the cause of them going Maverick. Not that that's anything new, just look at Repliforce. But to flip that on its head, is it possible that they're immune from the Sigma virus? Because they're already infected with it? Hard to notice a change if being Maverick is all you've ever known. Is it possible that, to some degree, they all are Sigma? Either in the sense that every person contains at least some of their parents in them, or in a way where he exists in all of them through his DNA and could assert his will and maybe even overwrite them. Maybe Sigma got tired of being a big, beautiful, buff, bald guy and decided to reincarnate himself as a purple little twink with an emo swish, giving Lumine his will and ambitions, but burying his memories and personality deep inside his code. Yeah, the pair exist at the same time, but you can copy data and Devil Sigma does look more like a shell anyway. You could even apply all of what I'm saying to just about any new generation Reploid. Lumine's just our prime candidate. Though if he does come back through him, hopefully he isn't too disappointed by where Lumine ended up. Double body snatch. But yeah, while I could see the intent of the X8 team to have been replacing Sigma, I still think there are ways to bring him back without trampling over what they set up. After all, if they took the angle that not even Lumine knew how deeply entrenched Sigma was in his programming, then it wouldn't be a lie. Whether they wanted to artfully spin it out of the current setup, or just clumsily mash it in there are several possibilities. All that said, I still do think that they need to pay off the Lumine Axel cliffhanger. We've been left with that dangling way too long, so just ignoring it would be a major slap in the face. Not that that would be the first time a game series has done something like this. Having Sigma and Lumine show up for both more casual fans and longtime believers would be for the best. Maybe even giving the game multiple routes would be the optimal solution. Plenty of previous titles did this, so it's not like I'm suggesting anything too crazy. Though, based on all the reasons previously stated, I could also see them just kinda sidelining Lumine's plotline and then giving a vague promise to consider addressing it in a future release if there's enough pushback. Mega Man is a very important property to us. But what do you think? Will Sigma come back? Will they stick to their Axle bullets? Will we see a little bit of both? Or was a return to the same old formula so obvious that you don't even understand why I'm asking? For watch time, that's why. With that though, thanks as always for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into retro games, especially Mega Man. Prepare to become space dust!